For this video, I want to show you how to use Desmos to find a linear regression equation and use that equation to answer follow-up questions. If you haven't already, pause the video to read this full problem statement. This particular problem comes from our e-text, page 146, question number 51. And you can see that we are given data here in the form of a table or list, and we have to give Desmos this data. So to do so, we're going to come over here to desmos.com/c or /calculator if you want to type in the whole thing, but you could just abbreviate it, desmos.com/c. You can see here. And it takes you immediately there. Next, we want to add an item. And you see this plus sign over here. That's where we add something. And we're going to add a table. Our table is an XY table. I'm going to use the values that I have from this problem, such as 8.8, 11, 11.2, and place them here into the X column. Now you'll notice for a second there, I don't know if you caught that, but it was trying to figure out a pattern in my table. Sometimes there may be, and so that's a nice little feature of Desmos, and sometimes there's not. In this case, there was not really a pattern in my table. So I am going to have to kind of go back and forth. To get to the next column, I can just click in that empty cell and I can type here, and what will go in my Y column are these volumes. So I'm going to pause my recording and enter in this data. So this is what your table in Desmos should look like when you have all that data entered. You do want to take a moment here to double check that you have not mistyped any decimals or missing digits or added digits that shouldn't be there, because that's going to significantly change the rest of the problem from here on out. So at this point, I'm really just going to work mostly here in my Desmos screen. I don't see the points on the graph, but notice that the graph by default goes on the X and Y axis, or approximately anyway, from -10 to 10 on the X. It looks like maybe -8 to 8 here on the Y, and that could be because I'm kind of scrunching up my window a little bit more than usual. I can change that window underneath this tool feature here that's called Graph Settings. So if you'll click that, you want to change your X-axis values to be to capture all of the X values that you have in your X list. I see my lowest one is 8.8 and my highest one is 20.6. So let's pick a value for our X minimum here, what X can be at the smallest, that is lower than 8.8, let's say 5, and another value that is greater than the greatest value in the list, such as 25, we'll say, as our X max, we can call it. But in other words, what we're saying here is we want our X axis to go from 5 to 25. That should capture all the X values I see in this list. I want to do something similar for Y. We could go here from, say, 0 to 80. Should be good enough. And then click in that graph settings one more time. Now I can see the points on my screen. The nice thing about Desmos is it does have this pinch zoom feature and a movable feature where if I don't exactly like that, I can still kind of adjust my window fairly quickly by doing those commands or whatever you want to call it there on the mouse pad or with your mouse. All right, up next, what we're going to do is take this data and find a linear regression equation. So in Desmos, in the second line, we're going to type Y1, and what I did there was I just typed the number 1. It automatically recognizes that that 1 after the variable must mean a subscript. Then I'm going to press the tilde key. Or type the tilde key. Usually that's on your keyboard up close to the number 1 key on your keyboard. Next, I'll type MX1 plus B. Now, I'm doing this because y equals mx plus b is the equation of a line in slope-intercept form. That's something I recognize. It's something we've discussed. But I have to use the sub ones in here for x and y because in that way, it refers back to my list of data in this table above. I also use this tilde, and that's a different symbol for a different course, but it's something that Desmos requires as part of this program for finding a linear regression. At that point, you see the parameters here. You see the line appears here on the graph, and so everything looks pretty good. If you wanted to type that as its own equation, you could type y equals, instead of m, actually type in the parameter. You could even copy and paste it. X plus b. Copy and paste that. And notice now that that red line is on top of what was the black line. So they are really here one and the same. Now I want to go back to my problem because not only were we asked to find the regression line, we were also then asked to use it to estimate the volume if the diameter is 15 inches. So what I could do is right here where I see my equation of my line, diameter was being represented by x. In that second part, that specific part of that question, diameter is now 15. So I'm going to substitute here, instead of x, I'm going to write 15. And what Desmos does is it goes ahead and calculates what y will be when x is 15. In other words, when what the volume will be when the diameter is 15. So now we know that when the diameter is 15, the volume is approximately 39.76. And we also see that that shows up here as this horizontal line for 39.759, and it shows me as well where that line would touch or intersect the linear regression.